marijuana agenda. Like the liberal agenda, but with profits. Ka-ching. You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
It's like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking.
Learn more at mjagenda.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the globe to bring you the latest developments in medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. It's time for the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville. Now, here's your host, Ross Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Thursday, and may the 4th be with you, 2017. It's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Welcome to the Marijuana Agenda. I'm Russ Belville, and coming up on today's show in the news from MarijuanaMoment.net's Cannabis Headline News, we find that Tom Marino will not be the next drug czar. We'll give you some details why. In our Police for Reform segment, Leap's Nick Morrow joins us to discuss his experience working in the LA County Sheriff's Department as part of the 1992 LA riots. Those are 25 years old. The Drug War Data Mining segment today, we take a look at Project Sam's ridiculous report they've released on the cost of marijuana legalization. In Cannabis Community Chat, we get you prepared for the Global Cannabis March this weekend. We speak with Dana Beal, the founder of the march, and Noah Potter, the organizer of the New York City episode of the march. And then coming up at the end of the show, we'll have time for a radical rant. I'll tell you how I'm heading off to Fort Worth for the Global Cannabis March and why you need to get your feet in the streets and stand up for the legalization, the adult use of marijuana. All voices matter. We need your voice out there in the streets, letting our elected officials know we're okay, we're good people, and we don't deserve to be treated like criminals. We got to take a break, but when we come back in less than 2 minutes, we've got your Cannabis Headline News. Stick around.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Looking for the 420 friendliest way to visit beautiful legal Potland, Oregon?
I'm Lori Duckworth, inviting you to come stay with us at Delta 9 House and Studios.
You get your own private room with queen bed and access to our high-speed Wi-Fi, premium entertainment system, and more.
We'll even cook you breakfast. Look us up on Facebook at Delta 9 House.
That's facebook.com/Delta9House. Delta 9 House is booked through Airbnb and licensed by the City of Portland.
Georgia.
Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
The Marijuana Agenda. Kevin Sabet's boogeyman since 2012.
You have offended my family, and you have offended Shaman Temple.
Yes, might have gotten away with it, too. If it wasn't for these blasted kids and their dogs.
I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every Friday for the Reefer Rock Review with Herb Thrasher from 420radio.org. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
This is your Cannabis Headline News. Brought to you by MarijuanaMoment.net, the complete source for all your marijuana news in one morning newsletter from Marijuana Majority Founder Tom Angel. Subscribe today for free at MarijuanaMoment.net.
This is your Cannabis Headline News for Thursday, May 4th, 2017. I'm Russ Belville. President Donald Trump will not appoint Representative Tom Marino to be the nation's drug czar, a White House official tells U.S. News. Pennsylvania Republican was widely expected to be named to lead the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. CBS News reported on April 11th that, according to multiple sources, Marino would be nominated to lead the office, a move that requires Senate confirmation. Marino was undergoing the final stages of completing his paperwork ahead of an official nomination, one source told CBS. Marino, in a statement, cited, quote, a critical illness in my family, end quote, as his reason for withdrawing, but numerous controversies, including a 1998 allegation that he helped a friend avoid a cocaine dealing charge through so-called judge shopping, may have had something to do with it. A spending package to fund the federal government through the end of the fiscal year passed through the House Wednesday. The $1.1 trillion omnibus spending bill includes the remaining 11 annual appropriation bills that will fund agencies and Congress for the rest of fiscal 2017, which ends on September 30th. The vote came 2 days before a funding deadline that would have shut down the government if the measure stalled any further. Included in the spending bill is the so-called Rohrabacher-Blumenauer Amendment that prevents the Department of Justice from spending taxpayer dollars to interfere in the lawful operation of commercial medical marijuana in the states that recognize legal medical use of cannabis. In the final days of the Vermont legislative session, a new compromise plan may finally result in the first state in the nation to legalize marijuana without a voter initiative. On one end of the legalization spectrum is the Senate's plan to have the state regulate marijuana. It includes retail stores and the taxation of pot, similar to the approach taken in Colorado. On the other end of the spectrum is the House plan to legalize the possession of 1 ounce of marijuana and allow individuals to grow a few plants. This is like the legalization law in Washington, D.C. The compromise incorporates the House approach and includes a special commission that would study how best to implement a state-regulated model. The panel would make its recommendations to lawmakers next January, and the proposal would be subject to legislative approval at that time. A Freedom of Information Act request by the New York Times has revealed that the experts chosen by the New York Department of Health to evaluate applications for just 20 statewide medical marijuana licenses had little to no experience with cannabis. The request for information was delayed 9 times by the department and finally rejected last Friday. On Monday, however, the department reversed course and revealed the names of the 17 evaluators, who are all state employees. The state's program has been criticized for a cumbersome and often opaque rollout, in part because of restrictions placed on the drug's medical use, for example. It cannot be smoked and must be used in forms like tinctures and oils. Critics have also faulted the state for seemingly opting to create a model from scratch, despite more than 20 other states having medical marijuana programs, an assertion the health department disputes, saying its panel, despite its lack of expertise in the field, drew from other states' experiences. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio is being called a liar by one of his Democratic rivals after the mayor said at a campaign event last night that among the changes he implemented was, quote, ending arrest for low-level possession of marijuana, end quote. De Blasio made the remark during a candidate forum in Manhattan hosted by the Village Independent Democrats. Robert Ganji, a longtime prison and police reform activist, sent an email to supporters Wednesday morning titled De Blasio's Marijuana Lies and citing New York State statistics showing that during the first 3 months of 2017, NYPD made more than 5,000 arrests for the possession or sale of small amounts of marijuana. In South Africa, the National Director of Public Prosecutions and several other government departments have filed an appeal to the decision by the Western Cape High Court legalizing the personal use and cultivation of dacha, as cannabis is called there. This has been your Cannabis Headline News for Thursday, May 4th, 2017. I'm Russ Belville. Subscribe now to MarijuanaMoment.net, the only daily newsletter you need for cannabis news.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
It's time for Cannabis Facts about Alzheimer's from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A new Florida study in the journal Molecular and Cellular Neuroscience found that cannabis promotes the growth of healthy new brain tissue. It can slow the effects of Alzheimer's and may in fact be able to halt it entirely. A long-term study by Ohio State University's Professor Gary Wenk concludes that people who regularly use marijuana get Alzheimer's at a much lower rate than others. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
The Marijuana Agenda like the Gay Agenda, only with better music.
I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 4 weeks for Shark Sessions from The Marijuana Show. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
This is Police for Reform, brought to you by Law Enforcement Action Partnership at LEAP.cc. LEAP is a group of law enforcement professionals advocating for criminal justice reforms in the areas of drug prohibition, mass incarceration, asset forfeiture, community policing, and more. LEAP provides qualified speakers across the world to speak with authority on criminal justice issues. We visit with one such speaker now in Police for Reform.
Welcome to Police for Reform, the podcast of Law Enforcement Action Partnership. You can learn more at policeforreform.com. I'm Russ Belville, and on this podcast, we'll be visiting with various speakers from Law Enforcement Action Partnership, people who have spent their days in law enforcement through being police officers, being prison guards, being prosecuting attorneys, defense attorneys. All aspects are involved in Law Enforcement Action Partnership. And joining us today, we have former detective and deputy sheriff Nick Morrow from Seal Beach, California. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's interesting to speak to law enforcement people who have been working in California, being that's been the hotbed of so much activism in marijuana law reform and drug law reform in general. And I was wondering if you could just tell the listeners a little bit about your background. When did you get started in law enforcement?
I got hired by the LA County Sheriff's Department in 1983 and worked a variety of assignments there, including custody that, all deputy sheriffs work, LA County deputy sheriffs go through. So I worked a custody assignment, patrol assignments. I worked detective assignments, station narcotics investigator, that type of thing. And then training assignments. I taught at the academy off and on subjects about, drug use, drug trafficking, that kind of thing. And so it's kind of a broad base. I had a lot of opportunities in my career. I got assigned. I worked in, sleepy little Catalina Island for a couple of years, and that assignment allowed me the access to training that most other deputy sheriffs don't get a chance to access till later on in their careers. So I was very fortunate there, and just kind of a well-rounded approach to law enforcement in general.
You were hired on by LA County in 1983. How long were you in law enforcement?
Just about 11 years. And so I retired in 1993, 1994 out of due to a service-connected disability. I messed up my back during an arrest of a drunk, and a couple of years of trying rehab and all that kind of stuff led to a retirement from the Sheriff's Department.
So given that time span, then, you must have been involved with the LA County Sheriffs during the time of the Los Angeles riots. People are recognizing the 25th anniversary of that event. Can you give us your perspective, what it was like for law enforcement at that time, and maybe how the war on drugs impacts this relationship between communities and the police?
Yeah, the relationship between the people that are being policed and the officers and deputy sheriffs that are doing the policing is always been it's always a contentious one at some level or another. Nobody likes to be looked after. Nobody likes to be called on their stuff, for lack of a better word. So you always have that tension that's there, and a lot of people try to explain it in a very simple fashion. And, there's social issues, there's economic issues, there's racial issues, there's, who deals with who and, where they are. There are a lot of issues that pop up into making that an incredibly complex thing to figure out. As far as the riots were considered, the tensions were on every aspect were high until the people that were being policed, the people that were being looked after by law enforcement. There's that not guilty verdict, that pops up at a time where the entire LA basin was a powder keg. And that's all it took to set it off. And if you go back into time, even further back, the Watts riots, a minor incident set it off. And, that's the type of thing. And then we try to blame it on one faction or another. Cops are bad. Gangsters were at the root of it. And, we're playing the blame game on every one of these social issues. And when smarter people than both of us need to figure out what really produced the powder keg environment that existed, and it still exists. We're, like I said with Ferguson and other police-involved shootings. We now have body cam footage that now everybody believes that they're there and they saw it and they know exactly what was going through the minds of the people that were there. But the body cams are, they're just a tool. And so, smarter people than us need to be able to interpret those and, come to the conclusion of what the real issue is and what really happened on a lot of individual circumstances. So it's not going to get any easier anytime soon. And the access to the social media and everybody has a video camera in their hand now. There's going to be less and less unknown about a lot of these incidences. So. That it's cautious optimism on my part that, okay, great, we're going to change the way we work as police officers, and the public is going to change the way they interpret police officers, and maybe somehow we're going to come together in the middle someplace.
Yeah, I would say that there's a lot of parallel in that the Rodney King verdicts were spurned, the riot spurned off of that was because of videotape that showed the actions of the officers in the beating. And now we have the Walter Scott case and other cases where we see video, and people oftentimes say that it's now only because the cameras are showing this that it's happening, that anything is being done about it. In law enforcement, there seems to be a code of silence, or people, closing ranks for their own rather than seeking out the justice that the people deserve in these sort of situations. In looking back to the 92 riots compared to what's going on today, what sort of reforms in policing have been attempted, are being attempted? What's going to make a difference in your view, with your experience?
Well, all of this is an evolution. I worked in LA County Jail, the Inmate Reception Center, so I was, involved in a lot of the people going back and forth to court, a lot of the housing issues, a lot of the segregation issues that were in there. And when I worked there, I believe the LA County Central Jail was designed for 5,000 or 6,000 inmates, and at the time there was I think the census was closer to 10,000. We had people jammed in a small space. We had people sleeping on mattresses in shower rooms and things like that. It was an incredibly violent place. And on one hand, it really had to be to maintain control over an incredibly crowded environment. So there were fights every night. There was abuses that came up, depending on what side of the fence you were on. And it was a very dangerous place for the officers that worked there. So you had to be on your toes, 24 hours a day kind of thing. But, because of things that happened during that time, because of allegations, because of incidents, because of, any one of a number of incidents, riots in the jail, that type of thing, we moved towards having outside people look at that. And the Sheriff's Department, there was, I think, the Christopher Commission and the Colts Commission. They issued reports about how the jails were being run and how, certain things that needed to be done. As a guy that was there at the time when all these things were happening, I think I, for in one part of my mind, welcome that scrutiny that, we really needed, those reforms needed to happen. And, things have improved there since then, despite people wanting to discount the fact that things are just as bad as they've always been. They've improved because, it was really bad. Now it's not as bad. This process still needs to keep going. So law enforcement needs to keep looking at themselves because, plain and simple, we're given the constitutional ability to do a lot of stuff. And, we have a lot more power than maybe the average person realizes. How long does it take the state to put somebody to death? Probably a decade in most cases. How long does it take a deputy sheriff or a police officer on the street to decide whether or not he needs to shoot and kill somebody? Less than a second and a half. So the people with that kind of power, that kind of responsibility, on one hand, they need to be given a little bit of leeway to be human beings. And then on the other hand, they need to be really, really well trained and well disciplined to do their jobs without doing something, incredibly tragic. And so, there is it's a two-sided issue. I've talked to a lot of people, how do I deal with police officers in the field? I get that question a lot. And, I keep telling them, I go, there's a lot of really good things that a police officer does. And when I got the job, when I applied for, the Sheriff's Department in LA, I was already an EMT. I worked at an ambulance crew. I was interested in taking care of people. That was what I liked to do. I was impressed with law enforcement. I wanted to be a part of it. And when I got in there, I learned in the academy, you learn first aid and CPR, you learn traffic safety, crime suppression, all the procedures for law enforcement, everything under the sun to benefit your community. And so we're trained to do a ton of things that are beneficial to our community. But at the same time, we're also taught that there are people involved in your community that are looking for any reason to kill you. And cops don't wear bulletproof vests because we're afraid of each other. We wear bulletproof vests because we're afraid of you. We carry extra bullets and handcuffs and all that kind of stuff, and we take training in defensive tactics and all that kind of stuff. And if you think about it from your perspective, all the things that I'm trained to do, I've learned I'm proficient with firearms and I have access to firearms and that kind of thing. If I looked you in the eye and told you I'm going to kill you, you have my face that you're going to recognize, and you're going to be afraid of me for what I'm capable of. And you have to be lucky every day of your life. I just have to be lucky once. And so if you think about it to yourself, how would you change the way that you deal? How would you change your life to deal with a threat like me? And, the quick answer is, well, you'd peek outside, you'd look around the corner and all that kind of stuff. So when you put the shoe on the other foot with me, I'm told that there's a portion of my community that doesn't like me, that was given an opportunity will kill me. How do you end up changing your life to deal with that massive threat? So it's, like I said, if you have one person threatening you, you have one person to deal with. In my case, I have 1,000 out there that at any one given time, every car I walk up to might be the car. And so, it's kind of like it's a two-way street. And what I'm getting at is the citizen on the street has to realize what the law enforcement officer is going through and what their responsibilities are. And the law enforcement officer has to realize exactly the opposite. So we're responsible for each other's safety. As a driver on the street, if I get pulled over, it falls on me not to do anything stupid that's going to make that officer panic. And as an officer, I'm not going to allow a person in a car who I don't know, who I've never met before, do something that may or may not result in me getting hurt. And so, the responsibility falls on both of us, and that's just in an individual contact. And then when you start talking about, citywide, countywide, statewide kind of policies, we all are responsible for making it as safe as it possibly can be for law enforcement to do their job, which is vitally important. One of the questions I always ask is, okay, if you're not going to call a cop, who are you going to call? Local gang member, meth dealer, who's going to solve your problems for you? And so, I never really get a good answer out of that one.
Well, Nick Morrow, we appreciate taking a nuanced look at all of these issues involving policing and the communities, and your experience is definitely useful in that discussion. We appreciate you joining us here on Police for Reform.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks a lot.
This episode was produced as part of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville, the daily news and interview podcast covering the world of medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. Subscribe now for free at mjagenda.com.
New beginner guitars and banjos are often constructed much better than ones built before your time. Why struggle? Get a new instrument or fix the old one. The trusted professionals at the Fingerboard Extension will evaluate your instrument for free. Repairs are priced for people who work for a living. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
This is Cannabis Facts from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org, supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. In 1937, the second most prescribed medicine, marijuana, was banned. It wasn't about marijuana. The paper, oil, and chemical industries lobbied to end hemp farming. No longer labor intensive, an acre of hemp produced more quality paper than 4 acres of trees. Plastics and fibers could be produced from a plant. Hemp can even produce 10 times the energy of today's ethanol. As marijuana prohibition ends, many states now allow farmers to again grow hemp. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to process America's hemp crop at hempinc.com.
The Marijuana Agenda. Kevin Sabet's boogeyman since 2012.
You have offended my family, and you have offended Shaman Temple.
Yes, might have gotten away with it, too. If it wasn't for these blasted kids and their dogs.
I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 4 weeks for the UK Cannabis Chronicle from the UK Cannabis Social Clubs. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Promoting the end of adult cannabis prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It's even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more on this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
As you know, I've been following the Joker to my Batman, Kevin Sabet, for, going on 5 years now, as he tries to scare the hell out of America that is increasingly becoming really cool with marijuana legalization. And in the early days of his time with Project Sam, there was a talking point that he used all the time, and it was that for every $1 that alcohol and tobacco bring in taxes, they cost society $10 in social costs. So his point was that if you were to make an equation, then you could say that pot cost, the cost of legal pot, is equal to the tax of legal pot times 1,000%. That was his basic figure there. It cost us 1,000 times more than what we'd make in taxes. Now, you haven't heard him say this very much lately, because Colorado and Washington State in their initial tax returns, revenues, were showing $200 million in tax revenue from marijuana legalization. So the 1 to 10 ratio there means that Kevin Sabet needed to come up with $2 billion in social costs from the use of marijuana in those two states. And he'd be hard-pressed to do that. You've heard me talk about this a few times, and I've always made the joke that, look, I'll give you a push. Show me an equal amount of social cost that has occurred from marijuana legalization. Well, maybe Kevin's been listening to me, because he has come up with a new report. This is on the Project Sam website. You can find it if you can stomach it. It's at learnaboutsam.org/costs. And the heading here reads, even a conservative estimate of a few projected economic and social costs of marijuana legalization in one state, Rhode Island, totaled $61.2 million for 2020, exceeding the revenues projected by pro-legalization activists by over 25%. Oh no! Okay, so first of all, it's Rhode Island, little tiny state, 50 miles wide. So I don't know how well you can extrapolate Rhode Island, which is a mostly urban, little tiny state, to how legalization would proceed in any other state. But first of all, let's take it at its face value. Let's suppose that this were all absolutely true. So the figure they give here for the different costs, the projected annual costs, totaled up 119.1% of the revenues that were projected by pro-legalization activists. So not 1,000%, 119%, 19% more cost than tax revenue brought in. Okay, that's if you take this at face value. That's if you believe Kevin Sabet when he tells you there's all of these terrible outcomes from marijuana legalization. So let's get to what the costs are that they're claiming. They're claiming there's administrative and enforcement costs totaling $4.6 million. And that would make up 9.5% of the revenue projected by the people wanting to legalize in Rhode Island. Fair enough. There are regulatory costs. You have to have inspection and testing and labeling and all this kind of stuff. Yes, there are regulatory costs, but less than 10% for regulation. Then he adds, increased drug driving fatalities costing $13.2 million or 27.3% of the tax revenues. Hold the phone. Increased drug driving fatalities. Now, this is backed up by their little dubious statistic that says, well, since we legalized in this state, we take a look at all the people who died in traffic fatalities, and my God, there's so many more of them that have marijuana metabolites in their system. Well, yeah, marijuana's legal, and now they can use it more often, and it's legal to do so. It's more likely that that window of time, that 30-day period in which someone could use marijuana, is likely to be tripped. It's likely to happen now, likelier to happen now that marijuana is legal. It's just as relevant to tell me you're finding more married gay men in car crashes these days. Yeah, because it's legal to be a married gay man. When they cover these stats, always remember they're talking, when they say a marijuana-involved auto fatality, they're saying someone's dead, we found marijuana in their system. It doesn't say that that person was high at the time. It doesn't say that their being high at the time had anything to do with the accident. They might have been high as hell, but driving perfectly safe and got T-boned by somebody else, by a drunk driver maybe. That would be considered a marijuana-related fatality for these statistics. So you can't throw in the 13.2 million there. He adds in a figure here, making up 28.4%, the second highest total of the projected income from marijuana tax revenues, to increased homelessness. Yeah, increased homelessness. If you legalize marijuana, all of a sudden there's homelessness. And for his statistic, he cites the Colorado and Denver homelessness counts that they've had since marijuana legalization has happened. Now, this is one of those things that's true. Yes, there have been increases in the homeless population, but it is out of context. The fact that there's more homeless people owes a lot to the fact that Denver and Colorado in general, since legalization, has had an economic boom. And there's been a massive increase in housing prices, the same we've seen here in Portland, the same they've seen in Seattle, because of that economic boom. Those increases in the housing prices and the lack of affordable housing is what leads to more homelessness. People coming from out of state trying to get jobs in this new economy that don't have housing when they first get there. That leads to the increases in homelessness. So you can't tout that as a cost of legalization. That's a cost of just an economy rising from finally having a job base and getting some tax revenue and putting some money into the hands of the people. I guess we got to keep pot illegal so there won't be more jobs and more tax revenue. He adds the increased ER visits. Again, the ER visits being related to marijuana are like the traffic accidents. We found someone in the ER that had pot in their system, or they admit they smoked pot, or we found pot on them, doesn't mean it had anything to do with them being sick or the marijuana causing their accident or their illness. He also adds in workplace, lost productivity, and more accidents, which again are dubious statistics at best that are oftentimes owed to the confounding factor that when marijuana is illegal, people won't admit that it was marijuana that caused their problem. Now that marijuana is legal, more people are willing to admit it, and that's why you're seeing some of these statistical rates increase.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
The Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association and the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit MJBA.net for more details.
It's time for Cannabis Facts about teen drug use from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A recent survey by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control indicates that in states that have legalized medical marijuana, the rate of marijuana consumption among high school students has not increased. In fact, in legal states like Colorado, teen use has actually decreased significantly. It's simply no longer a big deal for teenagers in legal states. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
It's like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking.
Learn more at mjagenda.com.
I'm Russ Belville with the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 4 weeks for Veterans of Compassion with the Veterans Cannabis Group. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
The cannabis community is a diverse set of people from all walks of life, conservative and liberal, black and white, straight and gay, rich and poor, and everyone in between. Learn more about the people we are freeing from adult cannabis prohibition in our Cannabis Community Chat.
Coming up this weekend is the latest iteration of the Global Cannabis March. This has been taking place for years all around the world. Over 300 cities at some count have been taking part. And of course, one of the biggest cities to be taking part is the Big Apple, New York City. And joining us to discuss this weekend's march is Noah Potter. Noah, welcome to the show.
Hi, Russ. Thanks very much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about the genesis of this march. How did it come about?
Okay. Well, actually, the event, the New York event, goes back to the early 70s. It's an outgrowth of the Youth International Party, the Yippies, strong New Left countercultural movement, and it grew. It's part of the same generation as the New York classics, the Pride Parade, the Halloween Parade. It's really an original, authentic part of the old New York culture. It's also now a global event. In 1999, it evolved into the Global Marijuana March, and indeed takes place in hundreds of cities around the world. If you take a look at the video online, if you go to our website, cannabisparade.org, and you click on the video at the bottom of the homepage, you can see the size of the crowds. I mean, there's got to be hundreds of thousands hundreds of thousands of people around the world taking part in this event. For example, in Buenos Aires, in Rio, in Cape Town, numerous European cities. The events in Colombia are huge. And they all grew out of this event, which I like to call our event. We're the founding chapter of the Global Marijuana March. And it actually, you may know a well-known personality, that being Dana Beal, is the founder of this event. He's been involved for decades. Came a point about 2011, which I stepped in to do some general management. He had taken a bit of an extended leave of absence in some correctional facilities in the Midwest, and I had to step in and keep it going, keep the tradition alive.
That's, of course, Dana Beal's a longtime activist, and we hope to be speaking to him about the event as well. Let's talk about the event itself taking place this Saturday, along with, so many other cities around the world. What are the details people need to know about this march coming up?
Okay, so there's two parts to the event. It's a parade that proceeds to a public park in which we have a sound stage with speakers and music. So the parade assembly point is West 31st and Broadway. There'll be a small sound stage set up. We're going to have a speak out with political speakers and activists. The parade will, and that's at 11 a.m., the parade will step off at 12:30 and head down Broadway to Union Square, which is a located park in around 14th Street. There's a lot of things happening there, lots of street traffic, lots of subway lines come together. It's really a perfect location. The show will begin at 1. We have sound permit until 5. We're going to have musical acts. We're going to have some speakers. I'm very, very, very happy to say that the direction which we've taken the parade has engaged with elected officials. And so this year we have participation from 3 elected officials. We have City Council member Rafael Espinal from Bushwick, who's going to be speaking for the 3rd year. We have the participation of State Assembly member Richard Godfrey, which is really just overwhelming. Assemblymember Godfrey is the grandfather, or the godfather, as you wish, of cannabis legalization in New York State. He brought about decriminalization in the late 70s in his very first term as Assembly member when he was in his 20s. He's been a champion in pushing the medical statute, and he had a great bill until the governor trashed it in 2014. And he's been pushing for the full legalization bill that's pending in Albany now. So we're very happy to have him. We're also going to be hosting, I believe, a representative of State Senator Jesse Hamilton. And Jesse Hamilton, my representative actually here in Brooklyn, is one of the co-sponsors, I believe, of that full legalization bill that's pending in Albany, the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, joined by numerous other activists, Empire State NORML, the veterans groups, and so on. We have a pretty good lineup of speakers. I have a good lineup of music. I believe we may be having some surprise guests, but people will have to stay tuned for that on our Facebook page.
All right. Well, let's get to that so people can find that information. What is the Facebook page or any other information people need to know to find you online?
Okay, so our website is cannabisparade.org, and our Facebook page is NYC Cannabis Parade, the founding chapter of the Global Marijuana March.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. And it's also excellent to hear so many of these elected officials that will be showing up to speak. I'm also curious about what is the atmosphere at these marches lately, as far as police presence or intimidation by police, cooperation from police, and do you anticipate any changes now that there's been a kind of a sea change in America?
Yeah, well, let me say first, our relationship with NYPD, I think, has been really, really quite good. At least, when I was involved in the mid '90s for briefly, and then got back in year out in 2011. And there were some really rough patches in the history of the event in the previous years. There were times when there were really many arrests. I mean, I've heard it up into the 3 figures. I believe that largely coincided with the Giuliani administration. Rudolph Giuliani, as so many of you might know, as America's mayor, is also a staunch opposition of progressive drug policy. there have been actually no arrests, to my knowledge, for at least the past 3 years. There was an arrest in 2013, I believe, which was conducted by a undercover narcotics officer in trapping someone into purchasing and then promptly arresting that person. And I was told, and this is like, double hearsay, that one of the commanding officers actually apologized to one of our MCs, saying that nobody had told him that the narcotics squad was sending somebody. But I've had very, very cordial relations with NYPD. I like to think that they appreciate that we're very earnest about maintaining public order, being respectful of the space, and they generally give. I have the understanding that they kind of like us. We don't cause trouble. We don't have fights. I mean, when there's problems, they come from alcohol users, and that's not to say that everybody who's a fan of cannabis is necessarily on a peaceful vibe. But generally, we don't cause trouble. So we've had very positive relations. I'm very appreciative of the assistance at NYPD. In fact, NYPD offered us the use of Broadway, which was a couple of years ago, which was just, who can say no to Broadway? In terms of new environment, you never know. There's no guarantee. People say, hey, so I can smoke weed. And we say, no, nobody said you can smoke weed. It's, we can't guarantee you anything. We come out for our event, as we do every year. There's a new police commissioner. I have not, this would be the first time. I don't anticipate any issues. There's nothing that gives me the impression that he's that cannabis prohibition is important to him, or, well, I shouldn't say it's not important to him, but it's not a priority. It's not a priority to harass peaceful cannabis users. In terms of the federal situation, that's anybody's guess. I'd like to think that there's sufficient opposition to the Trump administration in the city government and among the local electeds that nobody's going to be getting any special credit at the local level for getting tough on cannabis, and you never know. But I don't have reason to think that federal law enforcement is going to be egging on NYPD to take action, or even to take action themselves. Frankly, I don't know how they would do that. But so you never know. But there's no storm clouds on the horizon here, except the actual storm clouds. And if everybody could put in a good word with their preferred celestial being or non-beings, as the case might be, to hold back the rain, that would be appreciated.
Yes.
But on the human political side, it's looking okay.
All right. Well, good luck for this march taking place on Saturday, gathering at high noon. Is that correct?
Well, we do say high noon, and that's when people show up. We've actually called the assembly a little bit earlier this year, 11 a.m., West 31st and Broadway. And stepping off at 12:30. People who are coming are welcome to bring costumes. They're welcome to bring acoustic instruments, because we don't have a sound permit for the march. But the acoustic instruments, signs, positive signs supporting legalization or some minimum form of rational drug policy, and so on. All welcome.
All right, looking forward to it. I got my start in activism going to my city's cannabis march, and you can do the same thing. It's where you meet the people that are going to make the difference. Noah, thanks for joining us here on the show, and good luck again this weekend. Best of weather to you.
Thanks. Thank you, Russ. Thanks.
Global Cannabis March is taking place this weekend, and if you're heading out to your city to take part in the march, you have someone to thank for that. And joining us today on the telephone is Dana Beal, who was the... Joining us here on the telephone is Dana Beal, who is the founder of the Global Cannabis March. Dana, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
So, Dana, tell us about the founding of this march. How did this start, and how are things different now than compared to when you first started the march?
Well, the reason that we have it on the first Saturday of May is actually just weather. Even now, the weather's tricky, but it's like less of days of rain. You know what I'm saying? Very hard to have a cheerful marijuana march in a downpour.
Yeah, no kidding.
So usually about the beginning of May is about the first time you can do it in New York, and it caught on around the world thanks to Rudolph Giuliani, who tried to ban the annual pot parade in its 26th year. Instead, it boomeranged because we went on the internet and organized a worldwide march on that day to point up grievous violation of civil rights occurring by people, somebody trying to ban a parade based on its content, based on the message being wrong, right? Now you may see that Giuliani is the trouble for leaks from the FBI. Maybe he'll go to jail with the rest of the Trump clan.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? So you started the march. What was the year of the first march?
Well, the first guy to do it was a guy named Rex Weiner. He did it in '72. I was in jail, so I couldn't be there. The next year we did it, and it turned out to be quite big. It was, we were a little surprised at how successful it was.
And in these early marches, did you have
people?
How many people?
A few thousand. Right in the first year. They're going to be having a memorial to David Peel on Saturday. Steve Hager and Steve Bloom are doing some stuff with music, and
so in the
old guard, has lost a lot of people. Dennis Perone right now is on his last in hospital. He's in very bad shape, and he will probably not live another week.
That's a shame to hear.
It's good that I feel great. I mean, I had a heart attack, and I died on the jailhouse floor, and then was revived, and I got out, and I completely quit alcohol, and I just smoked pot.
Well, good for you, man.
Our message is that it's so much safer than alcohol and tobacco. It's not only good for people who are gravely ill. There's a public health imperative. All those people in Europe, I'm going to the NCOD conference in Barcelona, the European Coalition. They got to quit smoking tobacco with their marijuana, man. It's bad. Really bad. That will give you cancer.
Yeah, I heard that tobacco stuff's bad for you.
Yeah, like pot will block cancer. It's just a pharmacological happenstance. But
so, Dana, coming up for the march on Saturday in New York, you were telling me earlier about the giant joint. Is that now a part of the march?
Yeah, we've got it back. This is the joint that shadowed Hillary Clinton on her campaign. We were outside the Wall Street speech, or where she talked about a basket of deplorables.
Oh, really?
If they'd been talking to the pot people instead of chasing us off, we could have told them all you have to do is do a big press conference in Florida announcing you're endorsing the initiative and that you're for medical marijuana. You'll work out the details later, but you care about patients. That's what people want to hear. She would have won the election.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. That they're they were seriously off-putting to a lot of people. There was a certain point people were making up their mind. And I guess these are the kind of people who ended up voting for Gary Johnson, right? Because Chelsea released some kind of statement about reports of drug interactions from coroners in Colorado. That pot could be dangerous if you give it with something else. When in reality, it just doesn't have those interactions with other drugs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Global Cannabis March is taking place all over the world this Saturday. Look around for the location near you, and you'll be up there.
Sometimes it's a week late. In some cities, it's like a week late because of their situation. I think in France, they do it a little bit late. But, it's basically this weekend and next weekend, mostly this weekend.
Excellent.
There's a huge march happening in Buenos Aires.
Dana Beal, I want to thank you for all you've done, all your activism, and for helping put together the march again this year. And good luck, and we hope you have some great weather.
This episode was produced as part of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville, the daily news and interview podcast covering the world of medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. Subscribe now for free at mjagenda.com.
Hey everybody, it's Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda, inviting you to be like me and get your ink done at Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo, Fort Worth's most female-friendly, clean, sterile, awesome tattoo shop. Thomas and his crew are true artists who can design you a custom piece or use a design you bring in. Lucky Horseshoe also offers all styles of tattooing as well as piercings and all-around fun. In the DFW area, stop by Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Trust me, it'll feel awesome.
Hey, this is Willie Nelson for Normal. And I smoke pot and I like it a lot. I learned a long time ago that marijuana is a lot safer than alcohol. There's nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It's time we stopped arresting and started respecting those who smoke marijuana responsibly. To learn what you can do to help, contact NORML at norml.org or call toll-free 888-67-NORMAL.
The Marijuana Agenda. Like the liberal agenda, but with profits. Ka-ching.
I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 2 weeks for the voice of the industry from the National Cannabis Industry Association. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Total war against public enemy number one.
10 federal criminal penalties for up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
Marijuana is probably the most dangerous drug.
Legalization is just another word for surrender.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
This is not medicine. This is a Cheech and Chong show.
Encourage people to use less drugs.
I inhaled. That was the point.
I think it would be a mistake to legalize.
Negative reports coming out of Colorado.
Good people don't smoke marijuana.
Radical rant. Not so much of a rant today as just a bon voyage, because we're leaving Delta 9 Studios tomorrow for Fort Worth, Texas. We're headed to the Global Cannabis March, and there will be a live show. I know it's a travel day, but I'm taking a red-eye flight from Portland direct to Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, and then tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Pacific, we'll be coming to you live from Texas with another edition of the Marijuana Agenda. So check it out. It's going to be a great march. I'll be down there speaking, as well as Lori Duckworth from the Southern Oregon Alternative Medicine. She was probably one of the last people busted for a felony for helping medical marijuana patients by running a dispensary. Just 10 days before dispensaries were made legal. So she's got a great story to tell. Also joining us there, I just found out this week, Coral Reefer, the activist, the social activist out there, the Instagram star from Santa Cruz, California. She's got her Stony Sunday and her News Nugs. She'll be coming out to Fort Worth, Texas to speak as well. I'm glad she's coming out. Being able to speak and march in the red states is a whole lot different, and you get this really cool vibe of everybody being together. It's really refreshing coming from the West Coast, where we've kind of balkanized into a whole bunch of separate little niches as far as medical and children and veterans, and bless them all. We bring them all here on the Marijuana Agenda. But you get out there to the red states, and you remember how for them, there's no time to be separated. They're all one group fighting just to survive. So great to be out there in Texas. Big thanks to Sean McAllister and DFW NORML. You can check out their march at dfwnormal.org/march. And you'll be able to find out all the details. If you'd like to join us out there, there's plenty of other speakers from Texas that'll be joining us. Some great folks that I've spoken with before, including a cop there who's an active duty police officer who's standing with us to stand for marijuana legalization. I got to meet him last year. He's amazing. Nick Novello, I think his name is. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's his name. He'll be out there, and he's a part of a new ad being run in Texas right now to gin up support for decriminalization in the state. So that's some great news. Great stuff coming out of Lone Star State. That sound means that we're out of time here for our first podcast hour, but those of you watching and listening live on the Marijuana Agenda, stay tuned for Toker Talk Radio. Our phone lines will be open at 650-LEGAL-MJ, and they will actually work this time. I know some of you tried to call in and couldn't get in. We're still working out some of the kinks here in the new studio. For everyone here at Delta 9, I'm Russ Belville. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
Follow MJ Agenda on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and SoundCloud. And follow MJ Agenda Show on Twitter. Learn more at mjagenda.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.
Name something that gets passed around.
A joint.
A joint.
Now, streaming live on the Marijuana Agenda.
What are you people? On dope?
It's time for Toker Talk Radio.
Hey, this is great, man.
The voice of the Marijuana Nation.
Marijuana is listed as a Schedule 1 drug. That is absurd.
Call in now at 650-LEGAL-MJ. That's 650-534-2565.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel?
Hey, man. Am I driving okay?
Toker Talk Radio is your chance to make your voice heard in the Marijuana Nation.
They're walking on their pants with their cap on backwards, listening to Enema Man and Snoopy Poop Dog.
Send that message with clarity that good people don't smoke marijuana.
Now let's get to Toking and Talking with your host, Russ Belville.
Hey, welcome back. It's time for Toker Talk Radio, and we are live from Delta 9 Studios, beautiful legal Potland, Oregon, and I mean beautiful. Oh, it's up into the 80s today, walking around outside here in Portland. It's going to be hot in Texas, I can imagine. Checking out the live chat room at mjagenda.com. Got someone asking, how do I get an account? How do I register my account? Right? Where's the registration? Well, there is no registration. If you're in the chat room, just copy that little bit of text above the chat room, that thing that says /MSG NICSERV register. And then, I got to fix that so it says password in there. I better fix that. No wonder people are confused. I'll get that on break. Sorry, moderators, maybe you can explain it. There's supposed to be a password entry there as well, but basically the command is /MSG space NICSERV space register space what you want your password to be space what is your email. And then you send that in, you press enter, send that in. You'll get an email at that email address, and then it'll have a link, and that's what'll register your account. I'll make that a little easier to understand. I just looked up there and realized that the password part was missing, so we'll get that fixed. There's a story or two here I wanted to bring up. First of all, relating back to that data mining segment on Kevin Sabet. He's trying so desperately to find the costs of marijuana legalization to show people it's just not worth it. My goodness, if it costs us a few extra dollars, why, we're just going to have to go on continuing to lock up black and brown young people for smoking weed, growing weed, and selling weed, and poor people for that matter. See, that's where I'm lost on that issue in the first place, because to me, it doesn't matter if it costs more. It doesn't matter to me if there are increased social costs from marijuana legalization, because the government has no right to punish us for using marijuana. And I think there are less costs in so many ways. You know, Sabet and these guys, they want to add up what they consider to be the harms from marijuana, but they will completely ignore where we will save money from not busting people, from not housing them and incarcerating them, from the costs of them not ending up on a lower socioeconomic track in life because they got to check a box every time they want to get a job or they want to get a student loan or an apartment that says they're a criminal convicted of a drug crime. Doesn't want to factor those things in. You take all the negatives he can think of, which the things he thinks of, by the way, are specious at best. Throw those all in the mix, but forget all of the things that are happening that legalization has made better. That's evidenced in the DUI stuff too. Oh my God, there's been a spike of X% in DUIs from marijuana in Colorado. When you look at the raw numbers, it went up by 9. They increased 9 pot DUIs. But on the other side of the ledger, other DUIs, the alcohol and other DUIs, the rest of them dropped precipitously, close to 1,000 or something like that. So yeah, maybe you caught 9 more people who were smoking pot, but maybe more people smoking pot meant fewer of them drinking or getting messed up on opiates and then wrecking their cars. See, they don't figure that kind of stuff in. Here's the other thing. Here's the story I wanted to get to. It's on Live Science. Marijuana-related ER visits spike among Colorado teens. The number of marijuana-related ER visits made by teens and young adults more than quadrupled at one Colorado hospital after the state legalized the drug. Okay, so first of all, you got to check out the numbers they're using. They're saying it went from 146 visits in 2005 to 639 visits in 2014. Okay, yeah, if I look back to 2000, see, it's from before legalization to after legalization, to me, would be from 2011 to 2015. Maybe you make a comparison there and you say, look, here's the year before legalization. Things were fine. We legalized. All things went to hell. But if you're going to go all the way back to 2005 for your comparison, shit, why not go back to 1885? There were 0 visits to marijuana. There's been an infinite increase since legalization. I mean, that's the kind of fake science, junk science stuff they pull to try to scare us about marijuana. So they're talking about 1 per 1,000 in 2009, increasing to 4 per 1,000 in 2015. And again, 2009, we're still talking 4 years before legalization takes effect in Colorado. And of course, the number one thing they won't mention is that, now that it's legal, teenagers who are having some sort of freak out on marijuana, got into the edibles, smoked too much, had a dab, whatever, are a little more likely to admit what the real cause was. Yeah, there's been an increase in marijuana-related poison control calls and ER visits, but there's been a massive decrease in visits for, food poisoning? Better take a break. We'll be right back. Check out your calls at 650-LEGAL-MJ, and we'll talk about what is public toking. Does your porch count?
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Looking for the 420 friendliest way to visit beautiful legal Potland, Oregon?
I'm Lori Duckworth, inviting you to come stay with us at Delta 9 House and Studios.
You get your own private room with queen bed and access to our high-speed Wi-Fi, premium entertainment system, and more.
We'll even cook you breakfast. Look us up on Facebook at Delta 9 House.
That's facebook.com/Delta9House. Delta 9 House is booked through Airbnb and licensed by the City of Portland.
Georgia.
Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Join me for A Sensible Future from Students for Sensible Drug Policy every other Tuesday here on the Marijuana Agenda. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Hello, Mr. Man. Hi. I'm working. I'm sorry. No food till this is done. It's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation. Call in now at 650-LEGAL-MJ.
Welcome back, everyone. It's just about 9 after the hour, and we're going to talk a little bit about Colorado in this segment, because the Denver Post has reported a story entitled, Colorado lawmakers remain divided on whether you can smoke marijuana on your front porch. House and Senate lawmakers are deadlocked on a bill to define the prohibition of open and public pot use. So they failed Wednesday to strike a compromise. The legislative session concludes in just a few days, and the debate is literally, can you smoke marijuana on your front porch in public view? The Senate bill would forbid marijuana consumption in any place where a substantial number of the public has access without restrictions, such as a park or sidewalk. The latest version debated Wednesday took it a step further to prohibit consumption in a, quote, place not protected from unaided observation lawfully made from outside its perimeter, end quote. Yeah, so if you've got a 26th floor apartment in a condo and you have a balcony and someone on the ground could take a pair of binoculars and see it. Or no, it wouldn't even have to be a binocular. It says unaided observation. Okay, if you can see it with your eyes, you could look up 26 floors and see the guy smoking a joint on his balcony. That's what the Senate wants to prohibit. So in the House, some of these lawmakers said it's kind of stupid to be banning pot on the front porch, but some protections would be needed in certain areas. Senator Bob Gardner, a Republican from Colorado Springs, which is pretty redundant, said, quote, "My concern continues to be that in urban and suburban areas, property lines are so close that children walking up and down the sidewalks that are not 15 feet from a home. And frankly, it is a crime in Colorado to do a lot of things on your front porch, no matter how much you own the part of that home." Yeah.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
Yeah. So Senator Lois Court, a Denver Democrat, said she supported the language, quote, "I'm a child of the 60s, so I am familiar with contact highs, but that leads to the impact on kids, and I'm really concerned about that." All right, lawmakers. First of all, Senator Lois Court, you did not get contact highs from your time walking around concerts in the 60s and 70s. What you got was a placebo effect of being around people that were high and being able to smell something that smelled like marijuana. Numerous studies have tried to quantify this so-called hot box effect, this secondhand cannabis effect, that, oh my God, we're going to get a contact high. And what it took, they've been able to pull it off. They've been able to get people into a room and have them hotbox the room and ingest so much secondhand cannabis smoke that they end up turning up positive for THC, active THC, on a test. It has been done. The way they did it is they made a room that's like 6 foot by 6 foot cube, right? A little tiny ass cube. And they pump in the equivalent of like 10 people smoking joints nonstop for like 4 hours straight in that room with no ventilation. And sure enough, yep, they were able to get someone to turn up positive. That's hardly someone smoking on their damn front porch and a little kid walking by 5, 6, 10, 12 feet away. Give me a break. This just goes back to the fact they want to discriminate against us. They don't like our kind. They want to keep us in the closet and hidden from view because of our dirty, disgusting, sinful habit. This is a culture war once again. Even though it's legal in Colorado, the culture war continues in this debate over whether or not someone's smoking on their own front porch, their own property, something that they have not just a legal right to do, a constitutional right to do. This is in the damn Constitution, people. Imagine the outcry if it were trying to ban people from smoking cigarettes on their front porch. You've actually got a better argument for that. You've got a better argument for the secondhand smoke from cigarettes harming those kids than the secondhand smoke from cannabis. Imagine the outcry if this were, you can't drink a beer on your front porch, because the kids might see you drinking beer and that would promote alcoholism, would promote the love of alcohol. Because that's what they're worried about the kids. They say they're worried about the kids smelling the weed and getting the contact high and it hurting their poor little developing brains. They know that's bullshit. What they don't want is the kids seeing it happen. They don't want the kids seeing adults smoking marijuana and nothing bad happening. They won't want the kids seeing people smoking pot and all the lies that their parents told them about pot smokers being degenerate losers being proven false. That's what they don't want to see on the front porches. They don't want it normalized. They don't want people to believe that marijuana can be a part of an average person's day, that a guy like me, middle-aged guy approaching AARP age, wearing a tie, could step out on my front porch and smoke a joint. And trust me, folks, I do. Do it all the time. Front porch, back porch. Just about wherever I go, actually, but that's another story. There's also, they'll try to bring up the cockamamie claim about, oh, the smell is so offensive. Oh, it harms me. The smell is so offensive. And that's just living in a city, folks. That's just living in a city. If you live in a densely populated place, there are going to be smells you don't like. Garbage, urine, feces, kimchi, barbecue, you name it. There's a million smells. BO, oh my God, some of the BO some people have. There ought to be a law against those people standing on their front porch on a breezy day compared to the cannabis. If that's going to be our standard, we can't have obnoxious odors offending us, then there needs to be an anti-BO ordinance, right? No, there doesn't need to be an anti-BO ordinance. This trying to ban what is open and public smoking. And I think for most logical, reasonable, rational adults, passing a marijuana legalization law that said we're not going to allow open and public smoking meant, okay, there's not going to be, in the streets, not going to be in like a park, like a neighborhood park sort of festival. It's not going to be in bars and restaurants and movie theaters and places where the public has access. It's not going to be in hotel rooms and concert venues and sports stadiums and so on. I mean, other than it always has been and people have always done that forever. But regardless, I mean, when people were voting on it, that's in their mind, right? Open and public. We can't have people, just openly smoking pot in the parks and, in the malls and all that. I doubt very few people were reading that and going, oh yeah, we can't have anybody ever seen smoking pot anywhere, not even on their own property. Give me a break. Come on, really? This is the same people. This is the same type of nanny state people, same type of moralist Puritans that wanted to ban all the tobacco smoking outside. Like, we don't want the people smoking over here on the beach or in the streets or around people, around the doors that are around the public buildings or anywhere. Only these very limited designated smoking areas and in your house. You want to take the cigarette smoking in the house. Take it in, the cannabis smoking, take it all in the house. Nobody can, only place you can smoke's in your house, in your bedroom, door locked, 2 a.m. on a Tuesday under the covers. That's it. That's all you're allowed to do anymore. Thank you, Dennis Leary, for that line. And John Thomas in the chat room says, it's also bigotry against those dirty hippies. It is. It's, look, open and public smoking is what gets thousands of black and brown kids busted in New York every year. Those kids are a little north of Central Park, if you get my drift. Because you go walk around south of Central Park, you walk around Alphabet City area, you go walk around Midtown, you'll smell plenty of weed. I did last time I was in Midtown. I walked all over Manhattan. I went as far north as Central Park and as far south as the 9/11 Memorial. Actually, I was in Alphabet City as well. So I did a lot of walking in New York City. I smelled weed all over the place. Somebody's got some sticky icky over there. Oh, that's some good stuff over there. What I didn't see? Bunch of cops. I didn't see a bunch of cops shaking people down wherever I saw a marijuana smell. Then again, I didn't get north of Central Park, did I? Didn't get to Harlem. Didn't get to any of those areas. This is the same principle going on here in Denver, same principle going on here in Colorado. We have a constitutional right here. We're talking about numerous constitutional rights. Constitutional rights to private property, to smoke pot as an adult in the state of Colorado. This is just a sad direction that the legislature in Colorado has taken to get hung up over this issue, to get hung up over whether public pot smoking is a problem on someone's own property. If we're going to start saying you can't smoke pot on your own private property, your own porch or backyard, where does that end? Does that start becoming you can't smoke the tobacco? You can't have outdoor barbecues? I mean, if we're going to start cutting down on people's rights, and people think I'm blowing this up, but no, I mean, again, if we don't stand for the most vulnerable people, if we don't stand for the rights of us cannabis consumers in Colorado to be able to consume on our own private property, we're ceding the right to government. We're telling government it's okay to tell us what to do on our own private property if it offends somebody else.
silent breed is people!
Oh. Hey, folks, that sound means that it's 4:20 here in the Pacific Time Zone. Time for our Pot Smokers Union Local 420 mandated safety meeting. I'll be safe if you will. Be right back after this.
At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
It's time for cannabis facts about Alzheimer's from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A new Florida study in the journal Molecular and Cellular Neuroscience found that cannabis promotes the growth of healthy new brain tissue. It can slow the effects of Alzheimer's and may in fact be able to halt it entirely. A long-term study by Ohio State University's Professor Gary Wenk concludes that people who regularly use marijuana get Alzheimer's at a much lower rate than others. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 4 weeks for the Celebrity Marijuana Zone with Steve Bloom from celebstoner.com. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Jag heter David, PKA Dirtball. Vi ska röka hela tiden, alla år.
It's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation. Call in now at 650-LEGAL-MJ.
All right, welcome back, everybody. 23 after the hour, getting a lot of questions in the chat room about this hour, Toker Talk Radio. Is it going to be a podcast? Is this hour available anywhere except the YouTube channel? And the answer is no. It's not available yet, but it will be. And here's the deal. I've moved to this Libsyn platform, and it gives me like 1.5 gigs of storage space a month. And that works out to be about a month's worth of hour one of the shows for hour one. So I'm doing that right now. And then I'm saving the Toker Talk radios. And once we get the subscriber count up over like 100, I can apply to Libsyn's premium subscription services. And under that, that's where the VIP thing kicks in, where you do the $4.20 a month, and you'll be able to get the second hour of the podcast. You'll be able to get Toker Talk Radio available just for the VIPs. But I can't do that until I can start the VIP thing to be able to pay for the extra server space that it'll take to hold that second hour. So it's on the way. I'll get that fixed as soon as I can. Also had a couple of requests to make it easier to get to the chat room and to the live video window. Yeah, I've got some graphic buttons I'm making up for that. So just as soon as the show's over, I'll be able to get those posted. And what was the other comment somebody had? Now I forgot it. Oh, well. It's coming. And I'm getting everything up on all the other major platforms, too. If you like to listen on the go with different apps that are out there, they're available now. The Google Play Music app, you can find that at rad-r.us/MJA. small Google. And I put these all in the chat room as well. Maybe some of the moderators can pass this stuff around as well. For TuneIn, it's the same thing, rad-r.us/MJA, small TuneIn. And then the same pattern, small Stitcher, if you want to get it on Stitcher, small YouTube, if you want to subscribe on YouTube. And we're on SoundCloud again. SoundCloud is just soundcloud.com/MJAgenda. So the SoundCloud also contains all the links. And I think you can find all these subscription links on the Marijuana Agenda page now, too. There should be some subscription buttons that you'll find along the bottom there. They're for TuneIn and Stitcher and Google Play Music. We're still waiting on iTunes. I've submitted to iTunes, and that should be coming back shortly. And who is the other one that I've submitted to that we're waiting on? Oh, we got to wait like 2 or 3 weeks before we can submit to iHeartRadio. We'll get this out on iHeartRadio as well. So thank you again for all your patience as we make the changes. And I'm just thrilled that this publishes to so many platforms at once and does so quickly. This show, at least the hour one so far, will always be posted 6 p.m. Pacific time. So you can count on that again, like the old days. You'll always have your dose of the Marijuana Agenda. All right, let me get to some more news that has been happening in the cannabis world that I found quite interesting. There's a new study out. This one's published on Dove Press out of New Zealand, I believe. This is from it was published in New Zealand, but the doctors working on it, Center for Medical Cannabis Education from Del Mar, California, the Bastyr University Research Institute in Kenmore, Washington, and the Department of Medical Research Center for the Study of Cannabis and Social Policy in Seattle, Washington. And the study is entitled Cannabis as a Substitute for Prescription Drugs. What? People can substitute cannabis for prescription drugs? So the background on this is they say, more people are using medical pot for pain, anxiety, and depression. And they believe that prescription drug use may be decreasing in the states where medical cannabis is legal. So they took a look at this. Surveys of over 2,774 individuals, self-selected sample, who used cannabis at least once in the previous 90 days. They were surveyed via online anonymous questionnaire on cannabis substitution effects, recruited through social media and cannabis dispensaries in Washington state. So I will just start off by saying that's a little, not exactly the strongest basis for scientific study, not randomly selected, right? These are self-selected. So these are people who may already have more of an activist bent and may already claim these sort of things, believing they're true, whether they're true in their particular case or not. So we should be just, take it with a little grain of salt, but I still think it's some valid information we're getting here. So what they found is 46% of the respondents reported using cannabis as a substitute for prescription drugs. The most common substitute, narcotics or opioids, over a third, 35.8%, followed by anxiolytics and benzodiazepines at 13.6%. These are your anti-anxiety drugs. And antidepressants, 12.7%. A total of 2 drug substitutions per affirmative respondent. So not just one drug they're substituting, but out of 2,400 of them, 2,400 substitutions out of 2,700 individuals. The odds of reporting substituting were 4.59 confidence interval. So what they're saying is 4.59 times more likely that a cannabis user was going to say they used cannabis as a substitute than non-medical users. And they're meaning, versus recreational versus medical, right? So if you're a medical marijuana patient, it was 4.6 times just about more likely than the non-medical user. And they found a 1.66 greater odds ratio among those reporting use for managing the comorbidities of pain, anxiety, and depression. So if people had all three, they're 1.6 times more likely to say, yes, they were definitely substituting. Now, Their discussion on this, their conclusions, they say these patient-reported outcomes support prior research that individuals are using cannabis as a substitute for prescription drugs, particularly narcotics, opioids, and independent of whether they identify themselves as medical or non-medical users. This is especially true if they suffer from pain, anxiety, and depression. Additionally, this study suggests that state laws allowing access to and use of medical cannabis may not be influencing individual decision-making in this area. This was an interesting point. They had found a slightly higher percentage of those who reported substitution were those who lived in medical cannabis states, but it was a statistically insignificant difference. So the substitution effect is happening whether pot's legal or not. People are turning to cannabis, the substitute for opioids, anxiety drugs, antidepressants, at least according to this research. So we'll talk to Dr. Mitch about that in a couple of weeks, or actually a week away, 8, 9, 10 days away. Also, an update on a story we've been bringing to you. Before I get to the update, question from the chat room. Hi in Hawaii wants to know if I'm coming to the Big Island. No, I don't think so. The International Cannabis Business Conference in Hawaii is the first week of December in Lihui? I don't know, the little guy. LIH, whatever that one is. The little island, not the Big Island. So sorry about that. Let's get to this story that we'll follow up on. We've talked about this before. The NFL and its reticence to allow its players to use cannabis for medical purposes. Well, the NFL Players Association seems to be coming around on the issue. On Tuesday's Outside the Lines, the executive director of the Players Union, a fellow by the name of DeMaurice Smith, said the NFL Players Association would, quote, we intended to present a proposal to the league that has probably more of a therapeutic approach to those who test positive for marijuana. The idea is simply to make sure that we understand whether a player is suffering from something other than just a desire to smoke marijuana. I think all of us would want to have a process where, if there was truly a problem, we're treating the problem instead of just treating the symptom, end quote. All right, well, here's the thing. It's a nice step. I mean, yes, I'm glad they're making a recognition here. But the idea that an NFL player would just be wanting to smoke pot just to get high. No, I'm just hanging out. I just thought, maybe I'd smoke some pot to get high, is ludicrous. They may get high. They may indeed enjoy the side effect of the euphoria from cannabis. Sure. But every player in the NFL who is using marijuana is using it for a medical purpose. Come on now. The chronic pain, the concussions they deal with, the anxiety of performing at such a, superstar world level that they've got to perform at, the pressures of being a celebrity in some cases and being rich in others. I mean, there's a lot of things you can look at. And not to mention that, this is a league that's had some problems with domestic abuse, has some problems with their players getting a little out of hand, violence-wise. You'd think you'd want them smoking a little pot, mellow those guys out a bit. The really frustrating part of this whole situation with the NFL is that it's coming down to it being about bargaining. It's that they've banned them from using pot for so long that the owners feel like, well, if we're going to let you smoke pot, you got to give something in return. As if they should have been banning them from smoking pot in the first place, right? Well, now that we've stopped beating you, you need to let's compromise here. We need to have a negotiation. You'd really like us to stop beating you and poking in the eye with a sharp stick. So if we're going to stop beating you and poking in the eye with a sharp stick, you need to give something else in return. I don't know, maybe the shirt off your back and your firstborn child. Otherwise, we're just going to have to keep beating you and poking you in the eye with a sharp stick. It's like weird how this has become negotiation over whether or not these gladiators, whether these athletes who we pump full of all sorts of ungodly pharmaceuticals to the point where, like, what was that one? The one NFL player talking about getting an injection of something every day for 9 years that the FDA says you shouldn't do more than 5 days in a row because it'll kill your kidneys? Well, we'll accept that. That's all cool. Pump them full of that stuff. But God forbid we let them smoke pot without trading something off in return. It's just insane. It's cruel and unusual punishment when we know the effect that cannabis has in protecting these men's brains from the terrible toll that the game takes on them. No. This is very little to do with the negotiation points and a lot to do with the advertisers on the NFL telecasts that are paying $700,000 for a 30-second commercial to promote their beer, to promote their boner pills, to promote their anxiety drugs, whatever the hell it might be.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
New beginner guitars and banjos are often constructed much better than ones built before your time. Why struggle? Get a new instrument or fix the old one. The trusted professionals at the Fingerboard Extension will evaluate your instrument for free. Repairs are priced for people who work for a living. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
This is Cannabis Facts from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org, supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. In 1937, the second most prescribed medicine, marijuana, was banned. It wasn't about marijuana. The paper, oil, and chemical industries lobbied to end hemp farming. No longer labor intensive, an acre of hemp produced more quality paper than 4 acres of trees. Plastics and fibers could be produced from a plant. Hemp can even produce 10 times the energy of today's ethanol. As marijuana prohibition ends, many states now allow farmers to again grow hemp. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to process America's hemp crop at hempinc.com.
The Marijuana Agenda, like the alcohol agenda. But a lot safer.
I'm Russ Belville with the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 2 weeks for the Cannabis Minority Report from the Minority Cannabis Business Association. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
I have a package here for Radical Rick. Is there a Radical Rick here? How about a Rick Russ? Any Rick Russ? Somebody named Freddie Barack has sent him a package. Anybody? What is that? Sounds like a skunk. It's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation. Call in now at 650-LEGAL-MJ.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Almost 39 after the hour, and we're taking a look at the Pacific Northwest in this segment. A couple of stories coming out. Number one, right here in Oregon. Headline from the Oregonian reads, State fines marijuana company for safety violations in butane blast. In Astoria, a cannabis business was fined $5,300 for a series of workplace safety violations related to a butane-fueled explosion last fall that landed one man in a Portland burn unit. Oregon OSHA cited higher level concentrates for failing to ventilate the building, failing to have an adequate electrical system, and failing to obtain city permits. The company also didn't notify Oregon OSHA of the hospitalization as required. William Chris West, who was in the building at the time of the blast, was admitted to the Legacy Oregon Burn Center in Portland. West is a partner in the company, and Jason Oye is the manager, according to OSHA records. So, this is the kind of thing when you get a BHO blow up in a legal state under a supposedly legally operating business. This is the kind of thing that Kevin Sabet salivates over. Loves to hear this kind of stuff. And it's important for us to understand that bad things will continue to happen in marijuana, even though there's legalization. There will be bad things that happen. There will be kids that will get into edibles and might have a bad trip on them. There will be people who will wreck their cars on marijuana. There will be explosions of BHO. There will be house fires from poorly wired grows. But those things have always existed. That has always been a risk in life. Legalization doesn't create these risks. They help to ameliorate them. Here we have a company being fined, being regulated. We have it out in the open and exposed to everyone, and we have courts dealing with it and laws to deal with it. Rather than some guy gets caught doing it, blows up someplace, gets thrown in prison. Next guy that does it just knows, oh, well, I better keep it on the down low, much more on the down low, or get thrown in prison. With this kind of situation, the next company that wants to put together some sort of processing realizes, hey, we need to do this the right way. We can do this. We can make money at this. This can be a legal operation, but we have to follow the rules. This is what we want. We want legalization to provide this sort of guidance, to provide this level of regulation and inspection. The fact that legalization happens does not mean BHO explosions are going to disappear. What we do hope it means is there's fewer of them, that the places working with this stuff are better regulated, and the people doing it are better trained. It's like the argument we get about the black market, or the underground market, I prefer to say. Oh, we legalized marijuana, and yet the underground market is thriving. You people said that legalizing marijuana would make the underground market go away. Well, I never said that. There's always underground markets. There's underground markets in DVDs and purses, and there's counterfeit everything. There's an underground market for anything you can buy or sell. The question is, how much of the market is underground? The argument seems to be from our opponents that, well, doggone it, we couldn't stop people from selling weed illegally. So we're just going to have to let everybody sell weed illegally. Isn't that the argument, right? Well, we couldn't stop everybody from doing it illegally, so let's make that the standard. Right? No, under legalization, a lot of what was going on that was illegal has now become legal and regulated and taxed, and we're getting benefit from it. We're having oversight on it. Why would we want to give that back? Why would we want to give that up and put it all back into the part you're criticizing? I don't know what the percentages are, but let's use a number just for fun. Let's say 20%. Oh my God. 20% of the sales going on in marijuana these days are on the underground market. See, legalization didn't get rid of the underground market. Right, didn't get rid of all of it, got rid of 80% of it. Right? How is that a bad thing? These people, these Kevin Sabets and Patrick Kennedys, they want you to think binary. And they're the ones always saying, oh, the other side, the legal, they always say it's a dichotomy, legalization or prohibition. They're always such binary thinkers. But that's what they want you to do. They want you to think binary. Legalization didn't cure everything, so it can't be good. It's all good or it's all bad. No, there's a lot of nuance here. There's a lot of changes that are happening. It goes back to the point we were making earlier about how the mere legalization of marijuana, allowing people to be more honest about it, allowing people to take it up without fear of retribution, at least from the law enforcement. They can still get fired from their job and lose their house and lose their kids and lose their educational aid, but at least not from law enforcement, is nothing but a good thing. Because all of the bad things that could happen from marijuana no longer have the criminal stigma keeping those things underground. The kids who get the bad trip on the marijuana cookies can now admit that to the doctor in the ER. The people who have a home break-in, someone came in and tried to steal their marijuana plants, they can now call the cops and give a description of the perpetrator and try to get this thing solved and not worry that they're the ones that's going to get hauled away in cuffs for reporting that their marijuana got messed with. Now, we've got situations where if there are bad deals going down, that people can be more likely to want to report them. That they don't have to fear that their attention to the situation is going to lead to attention to their situation from the police. I got too many stories I could tell you from people in red states all over this country where they had something terrible was going on next door nearby. There was a gunshot. Somebody's being shot. Someone's getting domestic violence. Somebody's being beaten. So they're witness something getting stolen, whatever. And they call the cops, and the cops show up. And as soon as they see the pot pipe or the joint in the ashtray, suddenly it's no longer an investigation of what the call was about in the first place, the assault, the rape, the theft, whatever it might have been. Now it's, oh, look, a nice, easy case of a pothead where we can seize a whole bunch of stuff and they won't be really violent and fight back against us. We can put them to work in the prison and they'll be pretty good workers because pot people are pretty mellow, right? That's what this all comes down to. There's another story. Speaking of red states, this one's coming out from my KTVB.com, which was the NBC affiliate I grew up watching in Boise, Idaho. Title of their story, Garden City Business Set to Sell CBD Oil After Finding Loophole in the Law. Oh, boy. Okay, first of all, you have to understand a little bit about Idaho, Boise, Idaho. Boise, Idaho has one sub-city. You know how, like, Los Angeles will have, like, 1 million cities in it? You know, the City of Industry and Pomona and all these. I'm probably messing it up. I'll stop giving examples. I don't know what I'm talking about. But at least in Boise, it's got one of them little incorporated cities that's mostly inside of Boise, and it's called Garden City. When I was growing up there, we used to call it Garbage City, because Garden City is kind of like, well, first of all, it doesn't have its own school district. There's no schools in Garden City. They got a police department, no schools. That's the first sign. Second sign, it's where you find all your scrap metal recyclers and garbage company and used car lots and that one big roadhouse bar that always goes through a new owner every couple of years, and there's always some big drug bust there. You know, it's that side of town for Boise, okay? So this Garden City business set to sell CBD oil after finding loophole in the law. So Idaho, as you know, is the only state where the governor, Butch Otter, the angry gay sea mammal, banned or vetoed CBD oil for the epileptic kids. But he got such a hue and cry over this. People went, oh my God, you freaking animal, that he signed an executive order allowing, at the time, 25 of them to be involved in an FDA Epidiolex trial. That's since been expanded to 40. So there's 40 families, according to the KTVB story, 40 families in Idaho are being given clinical trials of Epidiolex, the FDA-approved CBD oil. It's not FDA approved. That's why there is a clinical trial. Simple reporting. Anyway, to see if it has any impact on seizures. Well, this is lovely if you're the parent of a child and there's a 50-50 chance your kid's getting a placebo. Isn't that fun? But anyway, the loophole that this Garden City business thinks they can walk through is it's illegal to sell any part of the marijuana plant except for the mature stalk. Mike Larson with Welcome to Science says that's where they're getting their CBD oil from the mature stalks of cannabis plants. No, I'm afraid our judges say that is incorrect. Larson said, quote, so all our products are derived from the mature stalks of plants, so not from the buds or the leaves or anything else, end quote. Larson says they're working with a company out of California to isolate the CBD from the hemp stalk, which means none of the other ingredients, including the psychoactive chemical found in marijuana, THC, will be in their oils. Quote, they just extract the CBD from the plant, the CBD molecule itself, they break it down and extract that out, and then we infuse that into the products themselves, so there's no THC anywhere in our products, end quote. Oh, man. I've been saying this for a long time, that somebody's eventually going to be the case that tests this CBD oil is legal in all 50 states bullshit. And Elisha Figueroa, the drug czar of Idaho, is just the kind of person to take this up. She says CBD, like THC, is also illegal, saying, quote, CBD is illegal according to Idaho law and according to federal law, so with or without THC, CBD is illegal. And Larson says the products that we're selling with no THC that are derived from mature stalks have always been legal in Idaho. They've never been illegal. Figueroa comes back and says, no, As a law enforcement has confiscated those products and had them tested, oftentimes they are coming back not including CBD or including THC or including another synthetic drug that is not related to marijuana. Figueroa added that many online research studies have shown that CBD can only come from the flower of the cannabis plant. Quote, the issue being that when you look at research and how CBD is made, the experts will tell you that it's made from the flower of the plant, which is absolutely marijuana, end quote. Here's where this confusion comes up, folks. If you take a hemp stalk, you can get some CBD out of that hemp stalk, but you're not getting it from the stalk. You're not getting it from the bast fibers, the hurd fibers, any part of the stalk. You're getting it from the resin of the plant that has stuck to the stalk. You know those stalks that are they got a little sticky to them? The sticky is where the CBD is being extracted from. And the sticky is resin, and resin under both Idaho and federal law is a controlled substance. It is one of the parts of the cannabis plant that's been defined in statute as being a controlled substance. They don't have to spell cannabidiol out because it's part of that resin. The stalk part that's legal is the bast fiber and the hurd fiber of the hemp stalk. Not anything resinous you get out of it, and certainly not a cannabinoid that you get out of it. Somebody's going to go to jail, go to prison over this, and Idaho could be the state to do it.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
The Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association and the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details.
It's time for Cannabis Facts about teen drug use from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A recent survey by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control indicates that in states that have legalized medical marijuana, the rate of marijuana consumption among high school students has not increased. In fact, in legal states like Colorado, teen use has actually decreased significantly. It's simply no longer a big deal for teenagers in legal states. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
I'm Russ Belville with the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 2 weeks for Cannabis Q&A with Dr. Mitch Earlywine from the Burning Issues podcast on CannabisRadio.com. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Most of us pirates, we go on vacation to North Dakota, you know, because they've got a town called Argosville. Arr, arr, arr. What are you smoking there, boy?
It's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation. Call in now at 650-LEGAL-MJ.
Welcome back, everybody. Closing up shop here at Delta 9 Studios and reminding you that if you want to get your room here at Delta 9 House and Studios, you need to do it quick. They book really quickly, and the weather is getting awesome here in Portland. We are Portland's 420 friendliest cannabis Airbnb. So check us out at delta9house.com. And we've also got the subdomain. Well, actually, we've got another website, delta9.house. Yeah, they have .house domains now. And you can book either room by going to indica.delta9.house or sativa www.delta9.house. So check that out. A couple of quick stories from the celebrity world here, and a quick reminder that I have the coolest congressman in the United States Congress, and that would be, of course, Representative Earl Blumenauer. Yes, we love Earl Blumenauer with his bow ties and his little bicycle pin. You know, he bikes. He's an avid bicyclist. He bikes to work in Washington, D.C. Everybody knows him for being the biking guy, the biking congressman with the bow tie. So he had a 420 Ask Me Anything session on the website Reddit. And according to the Oregonian, bow ties met barks Thursday when Snoop Dogg popped into Representative Earl Blumenauer's Reddit AMA to ask how celebrities could help with legalization efforts on Capitol Hill. So this was, back on 420, but I just wanted to report, it's the first time I'd seen this. So the account, Here Comes the King, which is Snoop Dogg's Reddit account, asks, what can celebs do to use their voice to support legalization? And Rep. Blumenauer replies, Snoop, you have already done more than you know for this effort. Having celebrities continue to speak out and to help people understand that marijuana has gone mainstream goes a long way. I would also invite you to join me in Washington, D.C. to a Congressional Cannabis Caucus meeting when you're in the area. P.S. We love having your Uncle Rio's Rib Shack in our neighborhood here in Portland. End quote. Fantastic. Loving that. Snoop's uncle, seriously, has a rib shack here in Portland. It's awesome ribs if you're into barbecue ribs. And the Congressional Cannabis Caucus, of course, Blumenauer, one of 4 bipartisan representatives to have formed the caucus. And I don't know how many more members they've gotten, but we are going to be focusing on that in a regular segment called Government at Work. So we'll keep you posted on whether or not Snoop Dogg ends up in D.C. at the Cannabis Caucus. I think that would be pretty awesome. In other celebrity news, the Associated Press is reporting that Miley Cyrus says she's completely clean after giving up marijuana. Yes, Miley Cyrus supposedly giving up marijuana. A Billboard magazine reported in April in an interview, this was published online yesterday, that she hasn't smoked marijuana in 3 whole weeks. 3 weeks. Okay. Wow. You've quit. You've gone 3 weeks. Wow. She says that's the longest she's ever gone without weed. I don't believe that. I doubt as an infant you were smoking weed, Miley. I mean, I know Billy Ray Cyrus was a star and all, but what does that mean? You mean since you started smoking weed at whatever age, 3 weeks is the longest you've gone without smoking weed? I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. Anyway, so she supposedly has stopped smoking weed. I don't know, maybe this is good news for us. I don't know that she's the best representative of the weed smoking community. She is the namesake, though, of one of the 4 hot, naked, underage chicks we keep in a cage here at Delta 9 Studios. That's right. You didn't know we've got a cage full of hot, naked, underage chicks here. Check out the YouTube page, my Radical Russ YouTube page. You can see these 4 hot, naked, underage chicks in a cage. Miley Cyrus is one of them. She's the blonde chick in the cage. We've also got a redhead chick in a cage, a brunette chick in a cage, and a black chick in a cage. So pretty awesome. You got to check this out. It's uncensored footage at youtube.com/radicalruss. That sound means that we are out of time, and later tonight I'm getting on a plane headed to Fort Worth, Texas. Hope to see you there at the Global Cannabis March. Check out dfwnormal.org/march. For everyone here at Delta 9 Studios, I'm Russ Belville. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
Follow MJ Agenda on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and SoundCloud. And follow MJ Agenda Show on Twitter. Learn more at mjagenda.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant